Hey, welcome to the Dikots, where we explore dichotomies and dilemmas of decisions that make us who we are. And today, we are going to explore a very interesting topic on corporate leadership, which is about empathy versus performance-based leadership. We know of a lot of leaders who are very, very famous for delivering cutting-edge performance quarter over quarter over quarter, brutally outcome-oriented. And we also know of many leaders who are very empathy focused. They melt in employee care and yet deliver performances. We are going to explore that topic today. And to do that, I have with me one of the leaders from corporate world, Shreya Anand. She's a fantastic leader who triangulates very easily between the boardroom, the performance stage as a debater, and then, of course, track and field as a middle distance runner. She has had a career where she has played the role of business consultancy. She has also handled lots of situations with change management, which involves performance, which involves people. So let's get started. I would like to welcome you, Shreya, to this podcast.
Thank you so very much, Subhajit. It is an absolute honor, and I'm so enthused to have a conversation with you today.
Terrific. Fantastic having you here. And this is a topic that, Shashi and me and several of us, we have been debating for quite some time now, saying that we need to discuss this with someone and get perspectives on empathy-based versus performance-based orientation in a corporate leadership context. So if you are ready to get started, I would actually like to start by asking you, Shreya, when you hear the terms empathy orientation, when you hear the term performance orientation in the context of corporate leadership, what goes through your mind? How do you define it?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to empathy, right, what I feel is that empathy is a skill. Why is that? It basically means that it's my ability, right, as a person to really genuinely understand the person who's sitting right across me, right? It also means that I'm trying to connect with that person on a personal level, and it doesn't stop there. So understanding is not sufficient. You need to act upon that understanding in, a thoughtful and a deliberate manner, right? So that is empathy to me. Now, coming on to the performance part, right? Performance, I feel, is a very tangible aspect for me. So when you talk about, your delivery targets, my KPIs, adoption rate for me, because I come from change management, right? So those sort of matrices that, tell that, okay, yes, I'm on the right track for delivery. That is something which I, refer to as performance orientation.
Do you think these two orientations can coexist in a corporate world? And if they do, before I get very provocative, which I shall, before we get there, if you think they can coexist, why do you think and how do you think they coexist?
Yeah. So I think that's an interesting question. I do believe that they can coexist. And I think I'm going to go on a limb by saying that they actually fuel each other. So generally, the misconception is that, empathy, or a person who's very empathetic is very emotion driven and very emotional, which is right. And the person who's, performance oriented is very rational. So this is the dichotomy, right, that you're trying to talk about. But then I feel that empathy fuels performance. So I believe that, these two can very well coexist with each other and can actually be the twin forces to a very better working relationship.
So you see them as complementing each other. Eventually, the outcome is some kind of a performance metric.
If paired well.
If paired well.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So, extreme of everything is bad is something which we have learned from the very beginning, right? So if at all you go towards the left-hand side of which I want to call as empathy, now that can also be detrimental. And if you go too much towards the right-hand side and just be performance-oriented and, leave the empathy part of it, and you're not considering the person or the people behind it, and that's also a problem. So that's why I say if you pair it well and do like a good ratio of both of them, which is very hard and very easier said than done, then you can actually come to a position of of establishing a tandem-based and good working relationship.
Yeah.
You're
almost triggering me to be provocative right now. So let me get into that space. I thought of asking a few more harmless questions before getting provocative, but we'll do this now. Let me put forth a couple of hypotheses to you, and let's just debate this out in a nice way, right? Because
Definitely.
I know some of our audience would also go through those emotions and feelings as they listen to us. Do you think too much of empathy orientation can lead to employee resentment because they see it as veiled favoritism? When you are giving too much of flexibility, when you are allowing for individual choices and flexibility, it can cause resentment in certain pockets of the employee base, thinking that this is some sort of a disguised favoritism. Have you how do you reconcile with that hypothesis?
I feel that it can be construed more than favoritism. I feel that people are acquiesced with, that we care deeply about people, but at what cost? Now, if at all you have very high performers in the team, they would be like, I'm doing above, beyond, and beyond. And the person who is just getting by is also, getting the same sort of result at the end of the day. So I feel that there will be resentment on the person because the high performer is carrying the weight, because the accountability part is missing. Right? So that is my take on it, that, if there's too much empathy, the accountability sort of goes out for a toss. And then the weight has to be borne by one's faction who are maybe intrinsically driven or whatever it is, right? And they are carrying it. And then they will have resentment and they will seethe with resentment that, I'm doing so much, he's doing this much, and, the outcome is the same.
How do you balance that opinion? How do you handle that opinion?
We handle that opinion by being empathetic, but by not diluting our expectations.
Yeah, and when you again staying on this topic of being empathetic, do you think it also leads to an emotional overload in the leaders? And the reason I'm asking you that question is, if there is an emotional overload, it might restrict the leader from taking prompt, objective decisions. I'm not saying the leader would be incapacitated to do that.
Correct.
But it might. How do you see that?
I agree with that, because I feel that, if you go too over emotional, then it means you're taking and deliberating way too much, right, on the situation, because it's too much driven with emotions and not thinking about the goal, right? And then when you're not thinking about the goal, then what's going to happen is that, you're going to miss the buck, especially in the sort of era that we are in today, especially with the Gen AI and now agentic AI, what is going to happen tomorrow. The leaders have to act promptly, safely, responsibly, but fastly. So basically, they have to respond in a faster manner. And if at all you're too emotionally driven, that is going to slow your processing speed and churn out rate.
Yeah.
So that is going to impact the business. And that's also going to impact the sort of leadership precedents that you're trying to set. Because every leader wants to be beloved, but also wants to be very high performing, right? Because they want to leave that sort of impact, the delivery impact, right? So I think you cannot go too emotional. That tangent is not going to work.
But you do need to bring in a balance. I agree with you, sharing my opinion, because of all leaders I can think of, the one that immediately pops up on mind would be that of Steve Jobs, right? When you talk of empathy versus performance. And the reason I bring Steve here is because he possibly went through these two extremes in his own career journey in different phases, right? So that is on my mind when I'm asking you this question. I wanted to get into some of your experiences, but I still have one question that's nagging me. So let me ask you this. This happened because, of course, I discuss stuff with my peers, my colleagues, and we have our own moments of agreements, mostly disagreements. And I picked up a term called as performative empathy, which essentially apparently means a balance of empathy and performance orientation. But the topic we were discussing that day when I learned this term is that this performative empathy is now not being looked upon very well by most of the employees, because they feel that when the leaders are trying to show empathy yet driving towards performance, they find it very disingenuous. Do you think something like that has really crept into the corporate leadership, or do you think that's just hallucination in some people's mind?
I reckon, very personally feeling, I think it is the latter. It is hallucination, because what people want is, right, to be heard, valued,
Yeah.
right, in the work arena, right? Everyone, no one comes with the intent of, oh, I want to do a shoddy job.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to do a good job.
Yeah. Everyone wants
Right.
to succeed.
Yeah, everyone wants recognition. Everyone wants to be treated and, treated right, right, and be valued for whatever they bring to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for that, I believe so performance is not a problem, right? But then if you go too much into performance mode and you leave the person behind, that is an issue. Because then they're like, okay, this person, this leader is only talking to me because, oh, he wants this KPI to be hit and these targets to be met and vis-a-vis, those sort of things, right? And becomes too transactional. Because you spend 1/3 of your day, and to be honest, in consulting, you spend really half of your day, working, right? And you're in this work setup. So you want to be valued for what as a person also, and not just an employee who does X and Y and Z spreadsheets, right? You don't want to be buried in that.
Not an agent to achieve a few metrics.
Correct.
That's what you're trying to say.
Yes, exactly. I think you've put it very succinctly. Yeah. So when that happens, then is when you bring the empathy quotient, you bring the emotional intelligence, right? And you tell them, hello, I hear you, I value you, I see what you're bringing in. So you are seen, you are heard. I might have 200 reportees in my VP ship, let's say, but I know what Shreya Anand is doing.
Yeah.
And I value that, and that happens when you bring empathy into the equation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You turn that transaction into a working relationship, and relationship driven with empathy always performs, because empathy means, Shubhajit, you have a purpose, I have a purpose, we have all different purposes.
Yeah.
But what is underpinned in the purpose is my core value and your core values. Now, performance orientation does not speak to your values. Empathy speaks to those values.
So you're equating empathy to values and performance to possibly outputs, tangible outputs. That's what you're equating. All right. Well, let's pick up that point you mentioned. I liked it. You brought in the term transaction, right? Agentic transaction, if I may coin that term right now in the context of this conversation. Look, performance is easy to measure. There have been decades of experience of how we measure performance. There are metrics.
Correct.
Empathy is not measured. At least I am not aware that empathy is measured. My question to you is, do you think empathy should also be measured? And if yes, how?
That's a tricky one. It isn't easy to answer that. I reckon yes, but not as rigidly and as hardcore way as you do your KPIs. Yeah, so let's do that. Empathy should be your guiding principle, and it should actually be a natural part of your work flow. You should try to do that, right? Because that touches upon the interpersonal aspect. Now companies are doing a great job with regards to having 360 degree value feedbacks. They're having all these people surveys, the pulse checks, right, and the engagement scores, which are anonymous. So people get to anonymously share what they feel about how the company is treating them, how the leadership is treating them. So they have the avenues. But is just collecting data sufficient? No, right? You have to act upon the data. So the leadership should take upon it that it should not be a tick box exercise, and you have to act upon the data, right? Now, so that is my take on it. Yeah.
So that triggers another thought in me, Shreya. See, the way you perceive performance outcome is almost linear, or maybe we are trained already to look at it linearly. So if there's so and so metric, let's say there's a ROACE, target ROACE, or target percentage margin, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
If it is 12%, it is 12%. It's not 11.9, it's not 12.1. We are trained to think very linearly on those binaries. Empathy, on the other hand, exposes itself very vulnerably to interpretation by individuals. So a sort of empathetic behavior from you as my leader can be perceived in a certain way by me, and it can be perceived in a very different way by another person on the team.
Correct.
Is that what makes it difficult to measure it? And is that what unfortunately or fortunately leaves empathy to be equated with some softer aspect of corporate.
That is correct. Because when it comes to empathy, you just cannot wholly rely on numbers and you cannot wholly rely on narratives. So
Yeah.
you need to combine both the ends.
Yeah.
In numbers and the narratives need to be combined and try to focus on the qualitative aspects, right? With empathy, are people really feeling a sense of belonging, right? Because then that will show in your turnover rates, like your retention or your attrition. You'll understand are people really liking the work that they're doing? Do they really connect with the mission of the company or the mission of the sort of faction of the VP ship, or the whatever program they're working on?
Sub-organization.
Correct, exactly. That they're working on, right? So those sort of things. I think that is point number one. Also, we should not be looking just wholly at the numbers, right? Because this is a mood of the people. It's a sentiment.
Yeah.
So we should look at a pattern. Try to look for patterns, because patterns will show repeatability. So in metrics, as you correctly said, they're hard numbers, right? So there you can be as prim and proper and precise as 12 means perfection. This is basically, a benchmark. Now here, look for patterns instead of perfection is what I would feel.
Yeah. I like the way you are differentiating. So both will be measured, is what you're saying.
Yes.
One would be measured more numerically, the other would be measured as an attribute, right? And we do that in statistics, right? I mean, there are qualitative and quantitative patterns that you pick out. If you reflect back on your experience, especially in change management,
Correct.
I'm sure there are moments where you would have found tussle between performance outcome versus empathy. Can you share an experience or a specific experience where you saw that being empathetic was coming in the way of outcomes, or maybe the other way around?
Yeah, definitely. I think there are so many cases, which come to my mind, because change management is a very different ballgame of its own, right? Because especially with the arena that we are in today, there's so much change happening, right? Across the board and of different volumes, right? So it's so important, first of all, that we accept that change is coming and work towards it. So I think I want to start off with that. But yes, in my trajectory, and this is not a theoretical topic, this is very, very real. And I'm very glad that you asked this question, because I have the best example from my career trajectory to share. So I was working in a very big flagship mergers and acquisitions program a couple of years ago, and we had this, I don't know, it's one of the most immaculate project plans I've ever seen. So I was a change manager on that program, and I used to report to a project lead. And we were having these so cutover periods are defined. You're moving to the acquired companies, moving to a different IT landscape, right? And everything is KPIs are defined, so you have all those performance outcomes sealed, right? For me, adoption metrics is very, very important, right? Trainings very important, because I come from that background. So everything was good. Now we've put all our, the first phase of rollout is about to happen. So we've done everything that we had to do, and everything was a checklist. Awesome, right? So the first week happens, and we're commencing with, I think, 1.5, 2 weeks into the program, in the first rollout, we saw unexpected sort of responses, and in the negative way, by the way. And there were so many areas which we never thought that this could be a problem. So for instance, I never thought that, training, which is being curated for them, training is there, the specialist is there, people are not turning up. No one's coming to the call. So
That's interesting.
Yeah. And the champions had already done a good job. So the message was cascaded, but people were not turning up. And now this is 2 weeks into the rollout, and what was my first instinct was the performance-oriented one. It was, because you're like hustle, because you have a timeline, right? I told you, this was so immaculate. So I was like, I was thinking, shall we just push, and just get it through, close the phases? But then something happened. And something was off. So I reached out to my project lead, and I was like, you know what? I think let's reflect. Give me time. And now time is equivalent to money in that sort of a program, right? So I'm losing money, and I'm also losing time, because my timeline, the deadline is extending, right? So my performance outcome is getting extended because the timeline is extending. But then I said, no, let's do a reflective exercise quickly, as succinctly as possible. We did that. And what we found out was just, I don't know, very surprising. Yeah, very interesting also. But because what we found out was that, they were not, the first instinct was like, oh, maybe they're not liking the change or whatever, the acquisition and all that. But no, that was not the reason. They were overwhelmed. Our program was not the only program that was running in this acquired company. There were other multiple programs. There was change fatigue. People were like all over the place. People who they knew as leads for 20 years were just leaving the company. Structural changes were coming in. Then we're putting a whole IT landscape on them, the whole suite. They're moving from Google to O365. And they're like, I don't want to give off my MacBook. I don't want to go to this, O365 and whatever, right? And we had not calibrated that. We were only
essentially getting battered with the plethora of changes.
Yes. And we were not, we left the people behind. We were just thinking of the matrices. Oh, I need to push. I need to get the trainings out and stuff like that, right? So that is exactly, I was performance oriented, but I'm leaving the people behind.
Yeah.
So then we pivoted, and long story short, we pivoted, and then, we came back on track. And, we had this whole empathetic exercise, we had a heat map. We were like, okay, how do we make it targeted, but also less overwhelming, right? It should not breed compliance. It should come naturally from them. So what we did was, I had a conversation with a counterpart of mine, and, I asked her, and there was resistance from there also, okay? So I asked her, we are working towards the same mission of energy transition.
Yeah.
This whole acquisition is happening because you feel that we can bring your product to scale. So our shared value is the same. We're working towards the same goals. So just because, and they fear that the culture and all might change, when they're coming into a big conglomerate. So they were fearful of that. So we had to bring him to a position for them to trust us.
The usual dimensions and human emotions around change.
Yes, and that wouldn't have happened if I had only focused on getting my trainings out and my statistics to be, do the checklist. It happened because we reflected and we had that empathy. We were like, we went to their purpose, energy transition, the impact that they wanted to make. And then something magical happened.
The purpose lit up.
Yes. The purpose lit up, and every single town hall started with a purpose-driven exercise. They were reminded of why are we doing this in the first place. It's not a run-of-the-mill sort of an acquisition. There's a very strategic purpose that is there behind it. And they all should be behind that purpose and then strive forward and forage forward when they move to this new IT landscape.
So essentially, you started this change management with a performance focus.
Yes.
Hit some roadblocks. You figured out that there had to be some purpose to be infused, which was an exercise riding on empathetic thinking, and then you kind of balanced it out. How much of a delay was there?
2 weeks. So the hypercare.
Over a period of?
The program duration, 11.5 months.
So that's 46 weeks. See, we often miss this thing, right? 2 weeks is nothing over 46 weeks.
Correct.
But I'm pretty sure your outputs would have been exponential and more sustained by just bringing in this empathy.
I have some great statistics there also. So, and why am I proud of this program, right? Because earlier we discussed why am I proud of this program? Because this program and whatever deliverables you've given has been used as a precedent that the future programs can actually emulate.
Yes.
So that was a success for us, that what we've done, something, that impact that you've created can be
replicated.
Yes.
No, this is fantastic to hear. I'm so proud of you. This is fantastic example. I can't resist myself asking one question. I kind of try to get to the 7 whys. When you look back at this exercise, did you pick up nuances of how different generations in the workforce reacted to how you started refeeding these things?
Yes.
I'm very curious about Gen Z, by the way. My son is a Gen Z.
Totally. Yes. And I'm glad that you brought that question up, because that is a hot and $1 million question right now. What is the future of leadership going to look like with the incoming workforce? Right. So yes, to answer your question, a lot of Gen Zs we work with. So some of my reportees are Gen Zs as well. And I think it's great to see such they bring in a new energy, they bring in a new sort of enthusiasm, and there's also a different sort of mindset that they bring in, which helps me also ponder on a lot of things.
Yeah. So where we were, Shreya, if you look at the employee base that was impacted by this change management, I'm sure there were different generations involved, right? So there were Gen X, maybe some boomers, maybe millennials, some Gen Z.
Correct.
Did you pick up nuances that told you, I can almost find this pattern with Gen Zs, I can almost find this pattern with Gen X, millennials, etc.? If you can share some of those nuances or nuanced patterns, if I may put it that way, what were those?
Definitely. I think, especially with Gen Zs, right, because they have a different sort of a mindset as compared to my own. To be honest, I think I'm like more of a hustling sort of a mindset, and high performing hustling. So that can also lead to burnout over time, right? So I think I have that mindset. But what I really appreciate of the Gen Zs, especially, is that, they want to do well. So there's I don't see lack of ambition, but I also see the wellness part of it. They're very focused on their wellness also. They want to do well and they also want to be well.
Yeah.
So they want a place which is psychologically safe. They want a place which brings in empathy.
Yeah.
So a leader who can speak both emotion as well as business fluently is someone that they are looking forward to.
And that's the ingenuity maybe they are asking for from a leader.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. What about Gen X? I'm curious because I'm a Gen X.
I reckon
they don't care.
No, they
do. I'm glad that
no, I think they do care, but I think they've maybe the way, see, it also depends upon how you've been groomed, how have you been raised, and what sort of environment of the society was also there when you were being raised, right? So it was, I think the mentality was mostly to tough it out. Survival of the fittest. I remember all this Charles Darwin quotes being drilled in me that you can't show your vulnerability, you can't show your weakness. If you show your vulnerability, it might be misconstrued as weakness. But today, no, being vulnerable means that you're authentic. You're actually showing what is going on with you.
Yeah. That's a funny point you mentioned, because I think grinding is something Gen X has inherited from the boomers. Right? Because grinding meant a lot of things. Grinding meant loyalty, loyalty meant security, security meant stability, stability meant success. Right? Whereas now you are saying that over the next 2 generations, when we look at Gen Z, I'm sure they grind, but they also try to balance it out with an awareness of what's happening around them in the environment, for the planet, their own mental well-being. So obviously the triggers and the sense of insecurity, discomfort, comfort related to change management would obviously have very different colors.
Correct.
Yeah, and the workplace is becoming more and more rich with all these mixes, right? Also confusing. I find it utterly confusing, which is why we are having this podcast today. Nice. I want to reflect with you a little bit on team culture right now. That itself is a topic, but we'll not get into team culture or the cultural aspect, the topical aspect of the culture, rather. I want some reflections from you as you look around your leadership journey. You also would have seen leaders around yourself, right? You would have looked up to a lot of senior leaders as well.
Yes.
When you think of an organizational culture built on empathy, when you look at organizational culture built on performance orientation, share with me, if you will, what are the long-term consequences or long-term implications of either or? Now, I understand so far in the podcast, we have come to a point where we are almost agreeing that it is somewhere in between. But just for the sake of debate, if we were to go on the extremes, what are the long-term consequences?
Yeah, definitely. I think let's talk extremities, right? I think it's important to see, if at all we're on the other, left and right hand side of the spectrum, what can actually happen. Yeah. So I think let's talk about empathy first, right? So if at all we're in a very empathetic, sort of an organization or a sub-organization, right, where empathy is given a lot of value, which is like, I care deeply for my people, right? But that can also come at the cost of accountability, because they are like, it's too emotion driven.
Yeah.
Right? Emotions are given so much power and value, and it becomes disproportionate.
Yeah.
Right? And you can even lose direction. Okay, so if at all you go too much into the empathy mode, the direction and the robustness which is required, right, to drive and propel things forward,
Yeah.
that is something which gets lost.
Or maybe at least be perceived as being lost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. So it can even be perceived to be as lost, but I feel that overtly, yeah,
It does.
It does.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about an extreme. Now, coming on to the other extreme of, when you have a lot of hustle with regards to the performance, oh my God, KPI out of KPI, you're bashing it out of the park, right? Those sort of things. Now, that also has a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because then it just becomes too transactional. You're just talking to the team lead, all your status updates, you go into a stand-up, you're like, okay, what's this update? What's that update? What's happening in the PBI backlog? What's happening in the ADO? What's the update? You're just leaving the person behind,
Yeah.
and you're not asking even the basic question of how are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you're asking, okay, you're asking some questions like, oh, what's your blocker?
Yeah.
Are you asking what that person is feeling which is blocking them? There's not just work blockers, right? There's a life as well which is revolving.
Yeah. You almost remind me of the iceberg model. What you're trying to say is performance orientation often comes across as the part of the iceberg that you see.
Yes.
Whereas you forget that there is a 11 by 12 fraction underneath the waterline.
Correct.
That's a very nice way you triggered that thought. Can I ask you another provocative question? I can't resist asking you this.
Go right ahead.
Given that you are across the table here now, I'm going to bring up diversity. Yeah, and I have my own opinions, but I want yours. There are stereotypes done day in, day out. Let's just say that, right?
Okay.
I mean, that's human nature. Stereotyping. Now, whether that's right or wrong is another debate, but stereotypes happen. I've often run into situations or conversations where people have made statements that women, females, are more stereotypically empathetic than men. Now, I see a risk with those kind of stereotyping, because then you are almost predisposing or pigeonholing female leaders for softer roles. You understand where I'm headed with the question?
Yes.
How do you react to this?
Well, I do not face that problem a lot. I'll tell you why. Because I'm very assertive. You saw my voice as well. But I do feel that, yes, that is absolutely wrong stereotyping. Right? Because that means that just because woman has a nurturing role, because of course, the way that she is, you're just saying that, she should only do softer roles. But I have seen in my career, and the ones who really propel me to do well are the women who've taken a stand, even better than men. Right? And I'm not comparing, but the comparison is required because the question is so lopsided.
Correct.
Yeah. And I've seen the sort of charisma, the way they've handled it with grace, dignity, and yet transparency.
Yes.
Right? Because what are people looking at? What are authentic leaders? People who can transparently tell you the truth, even if it pains.
Yeah.
You can't take away the pain. But when you're transparent and you're giving the support model with your empathy, you're actually gaining trust and ownership of the people. So to such women leaders who are, setting these examples, I say I salute you. Because I want to be that sort of leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when people who stereotype that, and stereotyping happens from both ends, by the way. It's not just that men are stereotyping this for women. I've heard many women also stereotyping women by saying that. And I'm like, oh my God, why are you saying that? You should be a part of our team. But anyways, leaving that aside, right? So I think when this stereotyping happens, right, it is not a good precedent.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't happen. So I have absolute no shame in saying this, that this shouldn't happen. This is absolutely wrong.
Yes.
And I have so many instances in my own career, and I think anyone who's hearing this podcast right now will resonate to those team leaders who they look up to, irrespective of being a male as well.
Yes.
That, they look up to those leaders who took a stand, who stood their ground, and have delivered impeccably.
I'm so glad we brought this up and how you responded, because while I was listening to you, the reason I asked this is, I resonate with you. I have personally grown up in an environment surrounded by extremely strong-willed and charismatic women across generations. But the point is, these stereotypes still happen.
Mm.
And I brought this up, a controversial topic, uncomfortable topic, because I want our audience to also reflect back that empathy and performance orientation be the topic is not only left there, there are folds to those questions. And an unfortunate fold, there are stereotypes that happen. Of course, I brought up the gender diversity. There are other diversities which
Correct.
come in and come in the way, actually, of
Mhm.
empathy, expression of empathy, or performance orientation and
Yeah.
interpretation of the outcomes.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm really glad that we had a chance to talk about this topic today, Shreya. Thank you very much for your time. And I hope that this conversation gets us into deeper reflections, right? What I would just take away from this conversation is that, there's no solution to this problem, empathy versus performance orientation. What we possibly need to be aware of from what you shared, I loved very much, is that we have to balance out interpretation of what we are trying to seek.
Mm-hmm.
Outcomes should be built on purpose. You should have outcome targets, but then empathy is the support system. And any performance orientation without empathy is extremely transactional, which through your expressions I figured out is very dry. It's not fun enough.
Absolutely.
No, but glad. Thank you once again for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did.
Oh, I did. I was so enthused about it, and it's such a fantastic conversation. So thank you so much for inviting me. It has been an absolute honor.
Good having you. Thank you very much.
Likewise.